Welcome to Let's Talk Kids. I'm Mary Coogan, President and CEO of Advocates for Children of New Jersey and the host of Let's Talk Kids, a video podcast with policymakers, experts, and community partners on issues and programs impacting children and youth. I'm thrilled today to be joined by former Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter to talk about a variety of things, and I'm so glad you could join me today. Welcome.
Thank you, Mary. I'm so excited to be here to talk about all the things we're both very passionate about.
Well, that's terrific. So we have 20 years you were in the healthcare sector, 13 years in the New Jersey Legislature, and now the president and CEO of Children's Aid and Family Services, which I guess is maybe the largest agency in northern New Jersey, really providing services to children and families and vulnerable adults, right?
Yes.
So how did you come to be at Children's Aid and Family Services? What drew you to that work?
So a couple of things, and thank you for running back my credentials. Every time I hear that, I realize that I have had a stellar career and opportunities all in New Jersey, so I'm always thankful and appreciative of that. Children's Aid and Family Services is a 127-year-old nonprofit that actually originated in Essex County.
Oh.
We started as Children's Aid Society. Adoptions was our strong point and roots. So if you remember the commercial, I'm really glad you made the Children's Aid Society. That was us. So we're rooted in adoption. Now we have 3 tiers of service, which is adoptions, families who need families. So children who cannot stay with their biological parents may need kinship care and guardianship care. We do that work as well across the entire state of New Jersey. We're also leading the effort for student mental health initiatives. Being 20 years in psychiatry services taught me that I really want to work towards prevention, especially when it comes to youth. I don't believe we can medicate our way out of the crisis of mental health. And I was fortunate with paths crossing in my legislative career in about 2015, where I met some executives from Children's Aid and Family Services, and we were working on a project dealing with youth violence in the city of Paterson, trying to stem that when the summer months came, working with the Passaic County prosecutor, Children's Aid and Family Services, and I really gravitated to the mission, stayed connected. In 2021, the executive was retiring after 34 years, took me to an infamous Jersey diner, because you know that's where all the business gets done. I was ready for a big budget ask as a legislator, and he actually said, I want you to consider being the CEO and competing for that position. At the age of saying my fork and knife dropped on the pancakes I was about to dig into. And I said, where are you going? Wait a minute. But he said, I really want to retire, but I really want some good candidates to lead the agency. To his credit, 34 years, he's seen some things. Our agency has lived through the Second Civil War, right? So we've seen some things, a pandemic, and we just have great people who work with us for our community. So the mission resonated with me, and it really has been the absolute joy of my life to fulfill the passions that I care so deeply about as the leader, president, and CEO at Children's Aid and Family Services.
That's really a wonderful story, because I'm thinking, I didn't realize Children's Aid and Family Services had that history, because ACNJ goes back 150 years, right, to the Newark Orphan Asylum, where you had providers doing foster care, doing adoptions, et cetera. But also, all that you've learned in the legislature and your background in terms of healthcare, what a wonderful resource to the agency in terms of coming into the modern world, so to speak, right?
All transferable skills. The great thing about the New Jersey legislature, and I interned when I was 19 for the very seat that I held for the 35th district. At the time, it was a Republican seat, which most people don't realize. But undergraduate student at Kane University, Kane College at the time, political science major. The infamous question that every first-year student is asked is, what are you going to do with that degree? I have no idea. So I was fortunate to intern, and it was a paid internship, but I learned so much about the inner workings of the New Jersey legislature and the power of the purse string that it has to impact so many things to benefit communities let alone oppressed communities or communities without taxable ratables that were changing as far as, Paterson was a industrial city. And with manufacturing changes, we were suffering, struggling, trying to figure out what this new era would be for new first-timers coming into New Jersey, what type of careers they could have. So it was important to me to understand those workings and how we better serve communities as government. In every job I've had, I've used that regulatory experience to navigate those uncharted waters for resources for vulnerable populations.
That's great. And I think about Paterson because I know you came to one of our recent Paterson Kids Count, and you also spoke at our release of our statewide book. But Paterson is such a diverse community. I remember talking to a prior superintendent, and the number of languages even that are spoken in the
Over
community
97.
Right?
Over 97 different dialects of languages.
So how does Children's Aid, what kinds of programs do you have at your agency that try to help all those different populations, and how do you make that work?
Sure, certainly. So a couple of the programs that I'm so very proud of, we have a senior wellness program that deals with senior isolation. So just imagine when you mention the different dialects, whether it's Russian, different Spanish dialects, let alone Haitian, let alone Peruvian, Turkish community. I was just in Bodrum, Turkey, had a beautiful time. Pakistani, Bengali, you name it, we have it there. But as they age, imagine being in a room or in a store with someone or walking down the block and you can't do the simple things such as a greeting other than a head nod because the language sounds foreign to you. So it really was important for us to use technology. So Children's Aid and Family Services, we go into the senior buildings, senior centers, and we work with seniors to make sure they're not isolated. And we have a grant through the Taub Foundation, now one with Passaic County in the state of New Jersey, to teach how to engage with the different cultures and pockets of senior citizens as one program. Then we do a hip hop program. Again, another de-stressor. Dance is a wonderful African traditional form of engagement with young people. How do you de-stress? And we do a hip hop program where they can express themselves. And it's so much fun to see. Decorating the sneakers, because you got to have swag as well, talking with young people.
Okay.
So seeing that Air Force One blinked out is always a fun thing with students. And then we have a program called Kinship Navigator program where grandparents are actually raising grandchildren. Thought they were at the golden years of their life, and for whatever the circumstance, now they find themselves parenting again. We actually partner with the state and provide financial resources. So if that mortgage or that rent payment you're struggling with, we actually can provide a financial resource to those families. We're not the only agency that does it. It's a statewide program. I like to uplift that program because the late Donald Tucker actually founded and funded this program in the legislature. We don't talk enough about it. If you need a refrigerator, if you need clothing, back to school items, medication, these are cash dollars that families are eligible for in partnership with the state that we can help support them with raising those kids so you don't have to do it alone. So what I love about Children's Aid and Family Services is we're a quiet engine that continues to meet families where they are with dignity and humanity.
So I am familiar with the Kinship Navigator program. I think there's probably 4 or 5 agencies who do that. And when we passed the Kinship Legal Guardianship Bill,
Yes.
They were instrumental because they also can help a parent or a grandparent do the legal paperwork without having to hire an attorney. Not that attorneys, I am one, so I will say attorneys all are good, but just in terms of making sure you've done everything you need to do and met all the requirements so you don't go to court unprepared. So
Absolutely.
I agree with you. There's lots of resources. And unfortunately, to your point, I think a lot of grandparents, it can be an emergency situation, or a lot of times people think it's going to be short term.
Sure.
And then 2 weeks becomes a month,
Yes.
becomes 6 months, becomes a year. And so there is a huge shift in terms of what they need. So having those supports are great. What I think also, you talked about this at our kids camp in terms of, I'm going to call it baby basics.
Oh, yes.
So you go from the seniors to the infants, right?
Yes.
But the baby basics, and I remember being struck by the number of diapers.
450,000 diapers. It still blows me away, Mary. If you can imagine pallets upon pallets and 18-wheeler trucks showing up with diapers, it beats the supermarket aisle. And what is astounding about that program, and I didn't know this as a young mom or even a legislator, where government does not fund disposable diapers.
Right.
Because it's disposable diapers. I do believe if there were more women in elected office, it would be funded. If you do not have disposable diapers, your child cannot go to a child care center, which means a parent cannot go to work, let alone the cost, and it's not covered by any subsidy. New Jersey actually did a pilot for the first time last year to purchase some diapers and distribute, and we were one of the pilot programs that justified the need with families who are in need, income eligibility below the poverty line for New Jersey. And this includes moms and dads. I don't want people to mistake that it's only women. We have a dad, and his story always breaks my heart. Mom gave birth to 2 twins and unfortunately did not survive the birthing process. Dad was left with 2 twins, could not work because he's left with 2 twins, and was at wit's end. So not only were we a diaper resource for him, but we were also an extension of family support and coaching. The moms in our program would support him by picking up the diapers, because either you pick the diapers up or have them delivered to the homes. And imagine 2 infants, new dad, lost mom. How do you navigate those pieces, let alone the emotional ties that come with that? So I'm so very proud of our agency and the partners who support us in this effort and making sure that we can fund those families getting needs met that are very, very basic and necessary for the health and wellness of those babies.
So how does one, if I need help, how do I access Children's Aid and Family Services?
Thank you.
Walk in?
So a couple of things. You absolutely can walk in. We're located in Paramus in Bergen County, but we also have a website at children'saidandfamilyservices.org. It's important that people know how to connect with us, and then we have the Baby Basics program that's listed there. So we'll make sure we're on social media. We're on Facebook at Children's Aid and Family Services or at CAFSNJ.org. So I had to work to make sure I remember all those letters.
I hear you. Okay, so people, there's a variety of ways, but also it sounds like you do partner with other community groups. So people may be involved with another community group and still getting resourced through Children's Aid.
For me as an executive, it's always been important to partnership. I do not believe that one agency can do it all. I also am a proponent of making sure that we partner with entities such as ACNJ for the data to back up the need. I always love receiving the kids count report. I can tell you as a legislator, when it first crossed my desk, I was like, this is like, manna from heaven. When you think about what's changing, what we should focus on, why there's a deficit, and the report drills down to cities so you can focus on where those deficits are. As a leader who have access to precious resources, you need to know where to target your energies. There's so many competing priorities. So while Children's Aid and Family Services, while we do a variety of things and take care of adults with disabilities, we partner with the Food Bank, we partner with the Salvation Army, we partner with Newark Emergency Services, with the community colleges, Essex County Community Colleges, Bergen County Community College, Fairleigh Dickinson, Ramapo University, you name it, Eastwick College. Then you have Rutgers, who does a tremendous amount of data collection for all of it. It's important that we're working together to meet the over 9.5 million people's needs in the state. A healthy state is a progressive state. And I can't emphasize that enough. And we all should be concerned about the wellness, especially when we're one of the most expensive states to live in, that we're helping people to thrive and rise.
No, it's so true. And I think people, anyway, many people, I've become more aware of it because of my work here at ACNJ. You always have separated programs and don't realize people need access to multiple things usually at the same time. And so for your typical family to feel like they have to go to 5 different places makes no sense, especially when there is some type of emergency situation. So those partnerships are so critical, but that's really wonderful.
Absolutely.
The one other program I want to talk about is the NJ4S Bergen, right? Which you knew I'd want to talk about. So just for our listening audience, so that's the New Jersey statewide student support services, where they get the 4S. But talk a little bit about what that program does, which is housed at Children's Aid, right? But has been, I guess, the topic of a lot of conversation recently, not just the Bergen for NJ4S, but overall funding of NJ4S hubs.
So NJ4S was started approximately 3 years ago to combat the need for student mental health services for grades 6 through 12. At that time, because data is ever moving, at that time, that was the most vulnerable population coming off of the pandemic of social isolation, anxiety, depression being experienced in schools. This program serves 1.2 million students, and it doesn't matter your income. Doesn't matter whether you have Medicaid, whether you have a health insurance managed care plan. It really partners with the schools to be sure that we're doing programming, prevention programming that is evidence-based, and it's big words. I always like say, okay, what does evidence-based mean? It means it's programs that have been tested. It means that they're tried and true, that yield positive outcomes. So we're not just coming in and there saying, okay, you have chronic absenteeism. Tell me why you don't want to come to school. Right? We don't know whether they've stayed up late because they had to take care of siblings, whether our high school students had to work a second job, and we learned that most of them are working and covering household expenses. Whether you're hungry, so fatigue is a real thing, whether you're using social media and have too much access to it and you can't get up in the morning to make it to school, whether you're depressed and have a serious illness that's gone unaddressed because no one's taking the time to take that deep dive. NJ4S has 3 tiers of services. Level 1 is prevention and programming. Level 2, bigger programming with the schools. And level 3 is referring you to a clinician who can either meet you at the school, in the community, a community library, a community health center, a community center that some places have, or in the school again. And I have to emphasize that. So wherever you are, telehealth also a part of it. Brief interventions, 6 to 8 sessions, and then it's determined whether you need continued treatment, that you need to go into a deeper dive of services with those students 6 to 12. Record success. School districts we've heard across the state, let alone across the country, are struggling with trying to meet their budgetary needs. Having access to a school counselor who has a caseload of over 400 students. How do they take that deep dive? That's where NJ4S comes in, and we partner with those schools. In Bergen County alone, we have over 150 schools that are eligible. We have over 90 schools that are participating. It's permissive. So it's not a top-down approach where we swoop in and say, you don't know what you're doing. We're going to come in and we're going to fix it for you. No, you invite us in. You sign up through a portal that's operated through the state of New Jersey, Department of Children and Family Services, connection to the Department of Education. So trying to break down those silos of, I got to go here because it's DOE, but yet it's Children and Family Services. And then I got to figure out, do I have the benefit as parents of knowing that my child can access services even if I don't have the health insurance or money to pay for it? It eliminates those barriers. So I'm a strong proponent of NJ4S, happy to be an operator. We do stellar programs in the testimonials. The one thing I can say is, as nonprofits in our sector, we're the 4th largest sector of employers in the state.
Who? Children's Aid?
No, nonprofits.
Nonprofits.
Nonprofits as a whole. but we do a terrible job. We do a terrible job about self-promotion as nonprofits. So my goal is always to make sure that we uplift the work that we do and the value. We're that partner for families, the community, the school district, and the state to deliver services through precious resources responsibly to our community based on need. So I always want to emphasize that because we don't talk about it enough. So it's not that, oh, we just got money to say we're going to do this. No, we do the work, talented professionals, clinicians who have chosen to work in the nonprofit sector versus private practice to meet students where they are and to help them find healthy habits. That's the prevention that we talk about of coping with very challenging situations and scenarios. And I know that was a long-winded answer, but I'm so passionate about it.
No, I think it's really important because I do know that coming into this budget season, there were some people who really did not appreciate the value of NJ4S. And I do hear things that maybe in the 15 hubs, there were different levels of success.
Yes.
Let's say in the certain hubs actually making the connections to the schools. But I think your hub was known as a strong hub. I also have talked to the people in Essex County, had a very strong hub. But to your point, I think you're referring to a survey that was done to superintendents and principals throughout the state. And I think there were people in Trenton who were surprised at how much they valued it and how much they said we need to continue this program. But as with every program, right? So it started a couple years ago. It takes a little while for people to acclimate, hire staff, make those introductions. To your point, it's not always easy to take a DCF, Department of Children and Families program and connect it to Department of Education and schools, right? So my sense is there were some people who felt money could be better spent elsewhere. I think I'm happy to say that the budget that got signed, it's still going to be funded. But talk a little bit about, are they going to try to strengthen some of the best practices, do you know? Or are you sharing best practices from the Bergen Hub with some of the other hubs?
Yes. So a couple of things happen through this process, and that's why advocacy is at the root of all that we do. 15 hubs or 11 hubs that we have throughout the state, all the way down to Cape May to Hudson County. Different communities of population, rural, suburban, urban, what they need, what's available in those communities for services. We're tighter today than we were 6 months ago because we talk just about every week through crisis.
Well, if it works.
So now that the crisis is over, a cadence has been established that we want to build upon and talk through best practice, evidence-based. What type of program model should we employ? And we can offer to schools and school districts with their input. Because a school in Bergen County that has a population that has a high level of a Korean population is different than a school in Paterson that has a high concentration of Hispanic students and what their needs are. What are the cultural norms that we must incorporate into our program? We're conscious of all of these pieces, and then what our parents want. So we want to make sure that we're including the whole and that we're not just talking as DCF, but DOE, even at the state level. We bonded with a new governor and administration, and I was in the legislature, you mentioned, for 13 years. Credit to Governor Mikey Sherrill's administration, credit to Governor Phil Murphy's administration who initiated the program. But in the first 6 months, we're talking to the executive office about the value of this program and 1.2 million students who have access where the fear and the barriers, transportation barriers removed, access and fees are moved. So we are able to create a healthy student school population. Teachers don't have to worry. My husband's a 34-year educator. Don't have to worry about, do I need to worry about this one child and their mental health stability or instability versus trying to teach core curriculum, which is a big part of my responsibility for 20 plus students in the class. We're now coming in partnership and making sure that we deliver those programming curriculum based, and we work through the summer.
Okay.
No days off for us.
I think it's important. Okay.
Yes.
So, I do appreciate, I think Governor Cheryl made a commitment to mental health from day one.
Yes.
She said it was important, recognizing that kids are struggling. So let's talk a little bit about that. So I know some of the program that's done by the hubs is mindfulness, teaching kids kind of self-regulation, how not to get upset by their fellow student, no misinterpreting.
Adults need that too, but
right?
yes.
Right. But I also know that some people recognize we don't have all the providers, right? But there are schools who say, I really need somebody in-house because I'm struggling with students that have a high level of need, overly anxious. Are we finding that students are more anxious today than 10 years ago? And why is that?
So I think you'll mention, hopefully, and highlight some of the data points on student anxiety, which was noted by a study from
Rutgers.
Yes, and the numbers really are astounding. So when you look at the anxiety number, if I have that correct, it's 36% higher. 36% higher 2020 than it was in 2019 when we built this program. If a school wants to have in-house programs, children's system of care, New Jersey really has a robust children's system of care that still needs to be undergirded with funding. The cost of everything has gone up, and I have to do a shameless plug for the Perform Care system, for the 211 number, for the 988 suicide hotline, because all of those pieces are connectors. So while NJ4S is one program, then you have the school-based services that some schools have, who are high needs districts where they have data. They also have that program. We don't compete. The good news is we now all communicate back to the partnership. So if you are in a high needs district, have a school-based mental health service program, we refer you back into that portal. You can go back in the system and start at square one.
Okay.
Versus coming out and saying, I'm done, I can't start again. For our hub, great data point when we started really drilling down, those young people who came through our clinical services brief intervention, there was zero recidivism for this past school year. So I can't wait to publish that number. But next year, guess what? When you start again, usually that October period where you really start doing work, the honeymoon's over, the excitement's over of being back in school, and you got to do some work. Mm-hmm. It's intense. That April, May, when they're doing standardized testing, it's intense for students, let alone who's athletes and have other stressors, can't get all the work done, multiple tests in a day. All of those things, our clinicians sit down and our prevention specialists, and they talk through what's creating those stressors. Vaping, something we don't talk enough about. Trying to manage student vaping, which should not be occurring, but yet there's a high increase in incident that we're tracking through one of my programs that's partnered with the schools on trying to stop, and we have a county grant, Bergen County grant, to do that, trying to stop vaping, stop smoking. We reduced smoking as a society, and then vaping became the cool thing to do. New Jersey, no cartridge flavors and all of those things. But how do we teach them healthy habits of dealing with anxiety, stress, depression, suicidal ideation, and how to find an adult? What are signs and symptoms? How do you find an adult to support you with this versus a 6th grade through 12th grader trying to be that support for those individuals? And then we don't talk enough about the students who lead the student advisory councils that come with NJ4S. So you have students really driving the programming that they need or desire for their communities with professionals who can help them put together programs that are evidence-based and deliver them. And it's wonderful to see the students highlighted and shine and learn how to talk to their peers about healthy habits.
No, I think that's wonderful. And I think they also are going to know their friends and their fellow students who might be in need of some services, or maybe who are vaping and people don't know they're vaping,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
So I think it's great. It obviously took a few years for it to come together, but you mentioned the Children's System of Care. So just for our listening audience, that's New Jersey's behavioral health system, which again, parents can access at no cost, right? And Perform Care, I think, is the contract provider, but they use health insurance if people have health insurance, New Jersey Family Care, if that's the program you're in. But if there is a student that has a high level of need and maybe the hub is helped for several weeks, but there really is indication that this child needs more, that referral can be made, right? So it's sort of a seamless process of connecting all the different systems together.
And Mary, we're fortunate in New Jersey. You explained it perfectly. You may need to document that.
I don't know.
And share it, that we have that full system that's robust, that really should be undergirded. So our hope is going forward that we can talk about how we intersperse all of those pieces and how we communicate, and then see data on the cross referrals.
Mm-hmm. So this will bring me into your next job, or your just prior job, which is your work in the legislature. So I'm hoping you're willing to share a little bit about, given all the programs, and I think now about this current budget season where there were a lot of programs facing some cuts, right? And wanted to advocate, start making all these phone calls saying my program deserves to be funded, and members of the legislature feeling a little overwhelmed, right? So let's talk a little bit about what are things that members of the legislature need to hear about from the nonprofits, but also how best to relate that information to them.
That's a loaded question.
Of course it is.
And you want the secrets to the inside baseball.
Well, only from your perspective, But let's talk about the basics. So you're saying, data is important, right?
Data is important. But from a standpoint of paring it down to the legislator's district, right? And I mentioned earlier the ACNJ report and how you go zip code, town base. New Jersey has over 500 plus municipalities. We have 120 legislative members, 40 districts, and they're part-time.
In theory.
In theory, they're part-time. They have a full-time staff. They're not the experts in all of the different topics, subject matters, or areas of interest that may be important to the individual. I'm from the generation of give me a 1-page white paper, 2-page white paper, because we know people are reading less today than they were in the past. If you're giving me, 15 pages, then I need time to process that because I'm studying at that point with all that I have to do. But I always lead with know your legislators. They want to know you, Republican or Democrat. They want to know you. Know who's going to Trenton representing you for a $60.7 billion with a B budget. If I don't know you, it's hard for me to put you in the forefront. We take a Shirley Chisholm quote. If you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. Okay. So you must make sure that when they're going into these high-level talks, they understand, drill down, this is how my program works. This is what it's connected to. I have a line in the budget. Now, it's a lot to you. Let's say if it's under $1 million, it's a lot to you. They're dealing with $60.7 billion, an executive branch, a legislative branch, commissions that are over 300 different agencies that have line by line. That's how New Jersey works. So you taking time to get to know them so they can put a face with your issue, your effort, what you need funding for, and make it a priority. And you may not be successful the first year. I will say don't be disheartened. Or you may have skipped years of funding. Don't be disheartened. Because the good news is in New Jersey, every June 30th, they need to pass a budget constitutionally. And every July 1st, the calendar starts again.
Okay. But think about how many bills are submitted to the I mean, I know it's thousands compared to the ones that actually get passed. And then there's this intensive work around the budget. So when's the best time to start having members of the legislature get to know me?
The best time is I'm going to say, as soon as they get into office, and set up a meeting. A chief of staff's big secret, they have power. They typically control the schedule of who legislators are meeting with, and they know what committees they're on. And if you're from that district, and I always say start with your district leaders, because the district leaders will be advocating to the leadership within the legislature. The budget address by the governor is typically in February, where they're going to lay out their priorities. And then it's all the budget meetings. So that's why I say the January window, early February, first quarter, for those who like the quarter cycle, to start meeting with your legislators so they know who you are, what you do. Also, follow up with emails with information. And if you're doing something, you have an event, invite them to your site.
Okay.
Or a program that you're having. So that way they can get a sense of how it works. So NJ4S, we're inviting them to programs. And usually, as we're a county, we have 6 different legislators, Republican and Democrat, for our districts. So invite them to programming so they know you're in the community. They want to show up. They want something to do. They want people to know them. Same for your local municipal leaders as well, your mayors, your council folks, your county folks. All important because sometimes the funds cross through all of those portals. So they know that the value of the dollar and the reach, because government can't do everything. And government has to get out of government to reach people. And that's where people come into play.
Okay. So, I mean, that makes sense because if the county commissioner is going to advocate for your program, that could be better than you advocating for your own program.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to take from what you said, if the legislator can't come, people shouldn't be upset if they send a staff person, right? Because
they should not. It still shows value.
Right.
It still shows value. If they're sending a staff person, that means you've reached them. And it shows value. And if you were not funded for any budget cycle and you were in, I would say keep asking. Squeaky wheel gets the oil, another cliche.
Okay. And a one-pager.
Yes, a one-pager, definitely. So they will have it to speak to the value.
And what do you think about QR codes that somebody has to go back and then look at a whole bunch of stuff?
Combination, because there's multiple means of communication today. So a staff person will probably use a QR code. The legislature moves fast. When you're in it, when you're at a committee hearing, you're moving fast. When I left the legislature, people were showing up without one-pagers. They were reading from their phones. Now, I'm sitting there, but I can tell you, my mind's going a mile a minute. I might be thinking about the prior testifier or did my kid make it to the bus stop on time? Right. So me not having that information in front of me and you taking time to read it from your cell phone and read at me is not my level of learning. So that's why I say having a one-pager to leave behind. QR code on the one-pager would be helpful if you want to attach a booklet or additional resources to it. But you definitely have to leave something behind. That's a lost art that I don't know how you get around. Or your website that has your position papers on it. So again, if I need to research, find something quick, because I'm on the floor in a heated debate on the value of this program, I can go to ACNJ and say, we need to make sure that we don't have a rise in child hunger as we had in 2024 by funding this priority.
Oh, interesting. I know whenever we've gone down, or we try anyway, if we go down and testify on a bill, we try to bring printed testimony. But I always do it for 2 reasons. Your first reason, valid, minds get distracted or people have to step out, right? So you leave the paper. But the other thing I find is sometimes you get down to a hearing and rather than just 3 bills, there's 15 bills. And the chair, understandably, will say, you're all in support, or I'm just going to bring 3 people up at a time, be brief. And I'm always cognizant of them saying, don't read your whole, that's
Yeah,
in their
yeah,
head, right?
yeah.
So to the extent you can give somebody something in writing and then do highlights
Yes.
is probably a better strategy.
Yes, it is. Typically what the chair, because I've been a chair, would say is if it's been said, please respect the time of the members who are here and the other audience members. However, you took time to show up for your entity, right? You drove to Trenton, to the state capitol, to share the position of whoever you're representing. That has value too. So I never want to dissuade that value. And I always put respect, because that was my training, on people who took time. I never want to go to a hearing and there's no one there.
Oh, no, you're right.
Right?
But I'm saying,
So it's
but
a
again,
balance.
putting
Yes.
it in writing.
Right. And then they can take that with them at least, because you want the staff to have it as well. Just think for the state of New Jersey, we're fortunate where we have the Office of Legislative Services that also support us as legislators. So if there's a technical error in the bill where something's misstated because they were writing fast, it should be shall versus must, right? May versus required. Those little words
make a big difference.
Big difference. And versus or, right?
Yes.
So as a lawyer, you're reading for those fine words that may be an oversight to the legislative services or the sponsor of the bill. So you taking time to come prepared, know how it impacts your industry or your service line helps to make a better decision. And that's the process.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it is important. How do people decide when there are a lot of bills listed or there's a budget hearing and everybody's only going to get 3 minutes? And that does mean somebody has to take off from work, right? So is there also value in sending a letter to a bill sponsor and just sharing your thoughts?
Absolutely. Always send a letter to the bill sponsor in favor or against, and the reason why. Because I would tell you, it was hard for me as a legislator to just see opposed. Give me a little bit more, right? Or support. Why? And yes, some will say it's fine to just get the yes, but it's a whole nother impact for me to know why. And some of the critical pieces of legislation, the child tax credit, that was a big priority for ACNJ, also for New Jersey families. Hearing why it mattered, the difference it made in the lives of families to financially support their choice of family and taking care of their children had an impact on why we voted to spend money that way. So your reasoning, even as a citizen, matters to your legislators, and it should, because it's your tax dollar.
Sure. I also think sometimes, even if you're opposed to something, giving the reason why, many times things are fixable, right? It could just get tweaked a little bit.
Yes.
And it could just be that the member of the legislature didn't think it through from that perspective, right? So you're giving
100%.
them, oh, you didn't consider XYZ. They didn't, but they could fix it.
Right. And most times it's just that, Mary. As I mentioned, we're on a 2-year cycle for the Assembly. Senate's on a 4-year cycle. It's hundreds of bills, hundreds of priorities, things you never heard of, thought of, as nuanced as changing the tier level for criminal justice system and the juvenile justice system, to fighting for safe practices for maternal health, to talking about school funding formulas and updating those, right, to food security, right? Very nuanced, technical. For everything, there's a cause and effect. So as much as you can share from an experiential and professional standpoint, is so helpful in crafting the next 2 to 5 years of how the state will operate. That's a lasting impact. It's not just sort of, we did it, it's done. It's now, how does it live and operate? And the legislature doesn't deal with the operation pieces of it. always a hard thing for me, being in operations of healthcare systems and running agencies and being truly a public servant and in the weeds. It's hard to say, okay, I passed that. Now go forth, be great.
Well, no, because sometimes stuff gets passed, and if somebody doesn't watch it, it may not get implemented, or it doesn't get implemented in the way it was intended. I've been involved in legislation in that regard, right?
Certainly.
Unintended consequences.
Yes.
Or people don't hear enough about the results,
right?
And the next thing you know, somebody's cutting the funding. Right? NJ4S.
NJ4S.
Right?
Back to why data matters, or one voice. NJ4S. The providers weren't spoken to before it became an issue, right? We had no idea that we were in jeopardy. So this is why it's important for you to have a relationship with your legislators. I had just started meeting with my Bergen County legislative members because that was important to me. That's the work that I do. A lot easier when I was in the legislative halls because I could have a sidebar. Now I'm not in the hall, so I need to schedule a formal meeting, right? Very different side of the table. Fortunate for good relationships, both Democratic and Republican, that they took my call and my meeting. But it was critical that that relationship was there and they could recognize, oh, that's something Shavonda mentioned to me. And then it was a call, what's going on? And I'm like, I have no idea. But before I form a opinion or an alarm, because for sure it was alarming, let me make sure that we connect with all the other hub providers, with the governor's office. What is it that you're seeking? What was missed? How can we help?
And I think also people being reasonable. I think to me, everything I heard, and I did listen in on a joint legislative session, right? People were trying to figure it out. Nobody, or I should say everyone acknowledged there was a need.
Right.
The question is how do you make sure that all the kids who need services at different levels can receive those services?
And really it came down to the younger children today having a greater need. And I can tell you, coming out of psychiatry services, emergency services, pediatric psychiatry, much different need than that middle school, high school person.
So let's talk a little bit about that part of your life, right? We'll transition. Because to me, when I look at where you worked at places that address the needs of children and adults with a very high level of need. Some of them having psychiatric problems, which I think, unfortunately, people tend to go to medication first, right? But what drove you to that area?
So thank you for that question, because often I ask myself, how did I land here? But really life-informed experience, community that was faced with trauma, stress, growing up in the city of Paterson, mental health, knowing that there was a need and people did not have access to healthcare, access to the dignity of receiving care and treatment versus being stigmatized. I grew up in an era where it wasn't cool to have a therapist, where it wasn't cool to be on medications or psychotropic medications, where it wasn't cool to say you were depressed. And I just need to give a shout out to Congressman Kane, who actually spoke on the floor about him suffering from depression. He just did that recently. That's why he has been out of the House. I think of the late Governor Cody, who talked about his wife who suffered from depression and got the help that she needed. But imagine a person who does not have access. So that's always been a driving force for me to create access, to make sure we had the Affordable Care Act in New Jersey where we could afford healthcare, and mental health was included in our exchange. All critical. So working in the healthcare systems, seeing the acute status of patients coming in because they did not take their medication, couldn't afford their medication. So hence went down a spiral. Can't sustain a job because they just could not get out of a major depression or anxiety or suicidal ideation. Finding the help that they need and working with stellar psychiatrists, nurses who do God's work by design. One of the things I love working in inpatient acute psychiatric services for children, adults, and seniors was seeing a person come in at an acute space and then by the end saying, thank you for helping me get back to my normal, what their normal was important to me. So I felt if I could work with a program in an agency that could teach healthy skills, because we knew there was a shortage of nurses, there was a shortage of clinicians, there's a shortage of psychiatrists. How are we as a society going to make sure that we de-stress the population, and help them find healthy mechanisms to deal with stress and de-stress themselves? So this is my life's passion. I'm happy to be on this and partner with the acute setting for services when needed.
Do you think there are more youth or younger children who wind up needing those acute services today?
Evidence has proven that there is.
And why is that? Or are there people looking at the why, trying to figure it out?
So we're studying the growth of anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation. We're studying now the impacts of social media and access to it neurologically. So very high level studies. We're studying parenting today. I can tell you there's never a time, even this weekend, where I have a sidebar with a parent or a grandparent who's like, I can't get my kid to go outside. Right? I can't get them off the tablet, and kids are using equipment younger and younger. I work with adults with disabilities. The one great thing about technology is it's a communication vehicle. When I started working with adults with disabilities, it was more sign language. Today, they're using more technology that's voice activated.
Okay.
Really amazing pieces to it. But how do we make sure that it's censored with parental guidance? I think of different companies who use it for technology for nefarious reasons and for harm. And how do we make sure parents are engaged? When my kids were younger, they kept changing a social media app, and I go back to a MySpace, to Instagram, to Twitter, to X, and what are they looking at? How do I get access to it? And they're scrolling so fast that I can't keep up. So how do we coach and help students and parents and community society at large address these challenges that lead to different stressors? How do we use our parks, right? How do we use our space, open space, to get people outside? How do we create healthy habits? I like to read books paperback because I'm on a computer all day, right? It does not relax me to look at bright lights and screens all day. And some of my psychiatrists will tell you that's a great thing because your mind is constantly going, it's calming, it's soothing for me. But what works for you?
Right.
Right. So we really have to double down in that space, whether it's yoga, whether it's healthy foods, whether it's cooking, whether it's dancing. Is it music? What's in the music? There was a time when we were like, okay, we got all these heavy metal beats, right? What is it making us do? There was questions on that. So I think we continue the quest of questioning it and continue the advancement. Social media is not going away. Technology is not going away. It's how do we use it for the advancement, health, safety, wellness of society.
So I think back where you started when you talked about the hip hop dancing, right? And I think back when I was a kid, many, 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 many years ago, we were just told go outside, come in when the street lights are on. But you didn't have a cell phone. There was nobody constantly saying, where are you? What are you doing? Your friends, you had to ride your bike to go knock on the door and say, let's do something.
Right.
You couldn't just be texting. And I think some of the efforts recently to get the cell phones out of the schools and that. But I also know parents are torn because they're used to having that access to their child and they're concerned about safety
Right.
issues or whatever. And so you have to find those balances, right?
Yes.
So to me, I guess going back to the NJ4S, my sense is some of the work of the clinicians in NJ4S is trying to build up some of those skills, right?
Yes. Yes. So the work of the clinicians, and I have to always emphasize the prevention specialists, because that's actually a certification program where they're coming up with programming that's evidence-based to improve or change behaviors for healthy habits, healthy processes. If you think about, it's always funny when we were growing up, it was go outside, turn all the lights off because electricity costs, right?
Right.
Drink water from a water hose. Who would do that today?
True.
Right? We're drinking bottled water. So it's how do we advance and make sure that we're conscious, and students have to be a part of it. We really want young people to talk to us, to help us help them build the lives that are healthy for them. And that's the beauty of an NJ4S. The Student Advisory Council, literally, you have students meeting on a regular basis. So they're starting to sit in meetings at an early age, just starting to document what they're working on and follow through and see it actionable.
Okay.
Items in work. So if it's a program they want to put on to talk through a challenge in their particular school and how they support each other, they're hosting it. We're just helping them to arrange it, set it up. And that's what the prevention specialists work on constantly with them. If it's deeper and we need one-on-one, then you have the counselors, clinicians who can work with them through that, or group setting. Again, at no cost to them. Invaluable resource. The school doesn't have to take from their precious budget dollars of having school activities, teachers in the classroom, curriculums that they need to pay for to fund this initiative.
So do those students have any opinion on AI?
So they are starting to have opinions on AI and how they use it. So I can't wait to see what this year brings. That's why it was so critical for us to double down advocacy efforts to continue NJ4S. We're just getting started. And New Jersey is a leader. We have a new commissioner of the Department of Children and Families, Commissioner Ripson. And he complimented NJ4S as leading and cutting edge from what he's seen across the country. So imagine if we get the kinks out and continue to grow it, then we can share it with other states to deliver for a global impact. So I'm kind of big thinking that way.
No, and I think he also understands the mental health issues.
Yes.
And I think he's very supportive of how figuring out the right way to address the mental health issues of youth, right? And
Yes.
also not starting to label our youth, which sometimes, especially when you have crossover into the juvenile justice area, that kids wind up getting labeled inappropriately or prematurely.
And Mary, it's important that you bring up labels because there are so many of them, right? And what we want our children and our youth to be is healthy. And it can fluctuate. You can go from anxiety to depression to having both at the same time, right? It's for a professional to diagnose and not for us to use as a moniker or flippantly. These diagnoses, they are professional, skilled folks who do that. So we want to be aware of the signs and symptoms. If a child is not there and bordering there, we want to be able to mitigate it before we get there, where we can. If you need professional help, medication, please, we want to put you on that path too. But the great thing is you have pathways you can follow versus not being addressed at all or ignored.
True. So true. So what do you want to see changed over the next 10 years?
So over the next 10 years, I would love to see a society where our young people are living their best lives. I want to see how creative they've become. I want to see the different fields, as you mentioned, content creators on social media responsibly. I want to see them living healthy lifestyles with the outdoors being protected, the quality of air, quality of water, breathable in every community, access to food where it is healthy and not contaminated or colored with dyes that cause greater harms. I want to see us advance as a society. The next generation is supposed to advance us further. I like seeing my daughter put my credit card on my phone, so now I can do tap and pay, and it's like genius. But then I'm worried, like, oh my God, am I reconciling my bank account? Right? Am I overspending?
Or are you the only one doing tap and pay?
Right. So, and I can tell you, it's modernized is great. When I think about when we say make a phone call, our generation did this with the rotary dial. The kids do this now with their hand because they're used to having a cell phone. I still have numbers memorized. They don't. And I have to accept that because it's a new way of being. But I also want eye contact and conversation with people touching people, because that's the only way humanity evolves, is people touching people in a positive way.
No, so true. And it's funny about the cell phones because I think of my nieces and siblings. I don't know any of their numbers. Their name is in my phone.
Yes.
I just dial it. So God forbid my phone gets misplaced.
Right.
I'm in deep trouble. But I know my home phone number from when I was growing up.
Absolutely. And do you still have a home phone today?
No, we don't anymore.
Right.
We finally did get rid of it.
Right. We don't have one either. So it's very different. But yet my family who's in their 80s, they have home phones that we still have to call them on. They don't even answer the cell phone. So talk about generational changes.
And they probably don't have a voicemail or an answering machine.
Oh, no, they pick up the phone.
Oh, it's true. Now, I just think of my husband was talking to one of the grandkids, and he had an old phone in his office, and they said, that's not a phone. And they picked their mother's cell phone as the phone. This is a phone. That's not a phone.
True story. My son came to work with me at the hospital one day, and he was in my office, and we used to use, for a report for nurses, a cassette recorder. You report for the next shift. The next shift plays it, knows what happened the shift before. And he was like, what is this? And I said, oh my, I'm of a generation.
And how would you even play a cassette recorder?
Not
Only
today.
In that machine, right?
Right.
No, it's true. It is true. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure. I know we could go on. Maybe we should check in another 6 months. But thank you for all you've done and continue to do.
Thank you.
These partnerships that you are creating and continuing are so critical.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much for watching. Visit the description to find out more information about today's conversation. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you enjoyed the video and want to be updated when our newest interviews are released.